Hello and welcome, a very warm welcome to the Green Bean. My name's Katie, this is my best friend Jack, and we're really glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a pretty special episode. It's the first that I'm recording for you in our new home, which, if you haven't seen most recent episodes, is in Wales. We've recently relocated from Dartmoor in the southwest of England to the Brecon Beacons, which is a mountain national park in South Wales. And we are very glad and excited to be here. It's certainly been a busy couple of months here in the Green Bean studio, as well as moving house. I had a product launch of 2 new knitting patterns and a whole selection of mushroom stickers, washi tapes, prints, all kinds of goodies that I've been working on all year. Steady on, Jack. Okay, see you later. Where was I? It's been a busy few months, moving house and dealing with the product launch. Thank you so much, by the way, for the wonderful support that you showed for my new goodies in my shop. It's been a really busy time packing orders, sending mushroom goodies out into the world, into their new homes. It's such a joy as a creative person to see other people getting excited about things that I've made, and yeah, it's been wonderful. So thank you so much if you shopped from my new products. I am now preparing to take a break. I'm exhausted, frankly. We moved house and did the shop launch at the same time, really without any days off or rest for a couple of months, and so now I'm quite exhausted and ready for a break. So I'm going to be closing my shop from the winter solstice until the end of January, and I cannot tell you how ready I am for that time of rest and relaxation. And I know that I'm gonna have plenty of things to do. We have a house which needs a lot of work. There's wallpaper to be stripped and goodness knows what else projects need to happen around here to make it more into our home. But my priority right now is to take some time for myself to reflect and relax and get on with some crafting, and I certainly have lots of crafting to share with you in this episode. When I say I've got lots of crafting to share in this episode, I mean lots of crafting. I've got 4 knitting projects that I want to chat about, including 1 finished object. I've also got a bit of crochet, and I want to give you an update on my spinning as well. But let's get started with my finished project, which won't surprise you probably. It's my moving house socks. I talked about these in a recent episode. I cast them on in March when we started the process of looking for our new home. and I finished them in late November when we had arrived and found ourselves at last in our new home here in Wales. They're a really straightforward, just plain vanilla sock knitted with this beautiful self-striping sock yarn from Nomadic yarns on Etsy. The colour is called Meet Me Under the Mistletoe, which is one of their Christmas colourways, and I purchased it on the base with yak in it. I believe it's merino yak and nylon. The yak gives the base a grey undertone, so the colours are much more muted. If you buy it on a plain white base, then the colours are a bit more zingy, if you like, but I love these muted greens, dusky pink, gold, chestnut brown and black. They don't scream Christmas to me, which is great because I intend to wear these socks all year round. In fact, if you look closely at them, you can tell they've been on several mountain walks with me already, so they're going to be a real staple pair of socks in my wardrobe. So I knitted with the self-striping. I also used a contrasting mini skein for the cuffs, heels and toes, but you'll be able to see on the second sock my contrasting mini skein ran out, so I had to return to the self-striping. So I've got mismatched toes, which in one way is slightly disappointing, and in another way it just makes these socks a bit unique and special, and I don't mind too much. Also, once it's in my shoe, you can't tell about that mismatched toe, so it doesn't matter too much. Because somebody will ask, I know, I didn't follow a pattern for these socks. It's my own basic sock recipe that I use pretty much for every pair of socks I make, whether I'm following a pattern or not, because I know what needle size I like, how many stitches I like, and the fit of my heel flap and gusset. But a brief summary in case you're interested. I used 2mm needles. I cast on 72 stitches. I knit straight down to the heel, either slip stitch or eye of partridge heel. I did slip stitch on these ones because it makes kind of a vertical stripe, which I thought looked nice with the horizontal stripe of the socks. I then do gusset decreases, placing them along the sole of the foot rather than here along the instep. And I finish with a barn toe, which is a technique that doesn't require any grafting. You just draw the stitches together like you would at the top of the hat, so you don't need to pick up a needle or remember how to do Kitchener stitch at the end of your sock. You just finish off your sock without any extra tools, which I find very satisfying. And that's it. Brand new pair of socks, all finished and already in good rotation in my sock drawer. Next up in terms of knitting is a work in progress that you haven't seen for a while. It's my, well, I'm calling it my Mithril jumper because of the yarn that I'm knitting it in, but the pattern is the Nightingale pullover by Norah Gaughan, which was from the issue of Pom Pom Quarterly magazine that she guest edited. It was on the front cover and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous cabled jumper. I'm knitting it in a yarn called Mithril, this one, which is from New Zealand. It is the very yarn that they used to weave the cloaks in the Lord of the Rings movies. So if you're a nerd like me, it has extremely special meaning. But in terms of the fibre, it's a unique breed of sheep to New Zealand. There's one specific flock, in fact, that it comes from, although it's a derivative of Gotland. So it's a natural silvery grey. This is not a dyed colour, it's the natural sheepy colour. And the breed is called Stansborough Grey. And it's beautiful, worsted spun, lustrous, lovely drapey fibre. I'm thoroughly enjoying knitting it, and I've finished, obviously, this piece, which is the back. I've also finished one sleeve, which has this little rib pattern down it, and I'm going to say 90% of the way there with my second sleeve. I am adapting the shape of the sleeves. In the pattern, the sleeves have this really dramatic puff sleeve, which is gorgeous, but not me at all. And I just don't think I'd get very much wear out of it. So I'm adapting it to have just a plain set-in sleeve, which I think I will get much more wear out of. But I kind of stalled on this project. I put it down for a couple of weeks while we were really in the thick of moving, because it just wasn't practical and I had no brain space even to be thinking about this basic rib pattern on the sleeve. All I wanted was those plain stocking stitch socks. So I put this in a suitcase, forgot about it for a couple of weeks, and I've found it really hard to pick up since then. I just haven't been in the mood for it. I think probably simply because I've been exhausted from moving and from working without really taking a break for a long time. But what happens when I don't want to do my knitting projects? I'm sure you experience the same thing. I just want to cast on something new. There's something about that excitement of a new project that helps you get over a bit of a knitting slump. But I know that when that happens, the risk of an old project, no matter how beloved and beautiful it is, getting put to one side and not ever seen again is high. So I really resisted the temptation to cast on something new, because I love this jumper so much. I really want to finish it. I want to have the finished piece to wear. But because I was resisting casting on something new and I didn't want to work on this, I found I just wasn't knitting. And after a couple of weeks of not knitting, I start to have a minor identity crisis. I'm like, who am I even? I don't know. If I'm not knitting, what am I doing with myself? So eventually I gave in. This project is resting. I'm sure it won't be too long. In fact, I'm trying to put in just 1 or 2 rows whenever I can. But I did decide to let myself cast on a couple of new things. My first new cast on is very, very practical, although it's a project I've wanted to make for a long time. I've had the yarn and the pattern in my stash since my very first visit to Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which I counted back on my fingers and figured out was 2017. So this project has been in the wings for a very long time. You might be wondering what this curious shape could possibly be. It's a jumper for my beloved friend Jack. Where we've moved to is really right in the mountains, and already in the first couple of weeks of living here it was noticeably colder than it has been in Devon, which is in the West Country. Although we didn't live by the sea, the whole county is really quite close to the sea. You're never more than an hour's drive from a beach. So it's a lot colder here than it was where we were living before in general. And recently we've had an incredibly cold period of weather here in the UK. It's been freezing. We've had snow, ice. It's been down to -5, -6, -7 overnight, which is possibly colder than it's ever been in my life. I don't really remember it being that cold any time recently anyway, so I'm waffling. What I'm trying to say is that Jack has been wearing his woolly jumper a lot, especially when we've been going out in the ice and snow, and I wanted him to have at least one more in his wardrobe, maybe a couple more, we'll see how we go, but certainly one. And the pattern I picked out is Walkies by Sue Stratford. I'm just looking at the floor as I say that word. Usually has an effect, but he's had a big long one this morning, so he hasn't perked up too much. Yes, Walkies is the name of this jumper. The first and most important thing I need to say about this pattern is it is not doggy size inclusive. It includes 2 sizes, and Jack is the larger of the 2, so it really is only suitable for small and very small dogs. I hope that Sue might consider expanding the size range because it's a gorgeous pattern, and the human side of the pattern, it also includes a matching hat and a pair of mittens and a little doggy treat bag that you can attach to your bag to put, I don't know, poo bags or tasty biscuits in. All of those cover lots of different sizes, but the actual dog garment sizes, there's only 2, and they're both on the very small dog side. But it is a gorgeous pattern. It's got this lovely motif of paw prints which have bobbles for the toes and a colourwork tree. And I've just got up to the point where I'm going to be putting some stitches on hold for the sleeves and starting the colourwork. So I'm really excited about getting to that part of this project. It's been a really fun, straightforward knit so far. It's really nice to knit with worsted weight yarn after knitting tiny socks. It tends to go very quickly. And I'm using the recommended yarn, which is Ram Jam from Daughter of a Shepherd, which I purchased along with the pattern at that Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I spent a lot of time trying to decide which combination of colours would look the most fetching on Jack, but I went with the black because it's most like his own natural coat, and the pop of the grey, I think, goes with his very distinguished, gentlemanly old man dog grey hairs. So I think this will look cute. And I am going to make the coordinating hat for myself, but probably in the reverse colours. So the light grey for the background and the black for the colourwork trees and paw prints. And actually my partner has said that they would also like a coordinating hat. So we were going to be the cutest family in fully coordinating knitwear. But let's see how we go. I need to finish Jack's coat first, and it's time to do the fun colourwork bit. And finally, my second new cast on is another pair of socks. I have been absolutely loving my knitted socks and wearing them, some of them quite literally to death, since we moved here to the mountains. So I'm in rather urgent need of some more socks, and also they are such a good travelling project, and I am going to be travelling for Christmas this year. I don't normally go away, I like to stay at home, but I am going to see my family, so I want to have a nice portable travel size project on my needles. So I decided a pair of socks was in order, and I decided to pick a pair that are sort of festive, but not so festive that they can't be worn all year round. I chose the Spruce socks by Originally Lovely. I found it on their website, originallylovely.com. You can also buy it through Ravelry. And they're just a plain pair of socks with a textured stitch tree design. Part of me wants to embroider some coloured French knots on those trees so they will look a bit like Christmas trees, but I think being sensible, I want to wear these socks all year round, so I'll just keep them plain. I pulled out this skein of green hand-dyed sock yarn from my stash. I caked it up. Well, it's been caked for as long as I can remember. It doesn't have a label attached to it anymore, so I'm not sure whose yarn it is, but it's this gorgeous tonal green, and I think it will work really, really well for the texture of those socks. So I shall be casting those on straight away and looking forward to working on them in some cosy, wintry, Christmassy evenings with my family. Now, as if all of those new knitting projects weren't enough, I've also started a crochet project. I was going to say cast on. You don't cast on a crochet project. What do you say? Hook up? No, that doesn't sound right. I've started a new crochet project. And I don't crochet very often, even though I do really enjoy it. I find that the motion of working with the hook aggravates my wrist in a way that knitting doesn't. Because I draw for a living, I'm very careful about any activity that aggravates my right hand. So I ration out my crochet carefully. That means I might only do a crochet project every couple of years. So it's a special occasion to find myself with a crochet project on the hook. And here is what I have to show for myself so far, if I can untangle it. A very long beginning of a shawl. It's the Escric shawl, which is from Daughter of a Shepherd's book, Beginnings. You might notice there's a Daughter of a Shepherd theme to this episodes crafting. It's because I recently went to Rachel's pop-up shop in Banbury. She had a Christmas pop-up shop. I spent the day there surrounded by her beautiful yarn. And what happens when you spend a day surrounded by beautiful yarn? You want to start making projects with that yarn. So I started making the jumper for Jack in Ram Jam, and I'm making this shawl in Rachel's Heritage DK, which is a beautiful natural chocolate, dark chocolate brown, almost black, worsted spun blend of Hebridean wool and Sfotlers. And oh, it's lovely. I've had my eye on this shawl for such a long time. Whenever I go to Rachel's stand at a show, she always has the sample on. I always try on the sample because it's so cozy. It's a really weighty thing and I love it. I've wanted to make it for ages. It seemed like the time. It seemed like a good time to begin. However, I've had a couple of false starts to this project. This is my second beginning to the shawl, and actually I'm showing it to you, but I'm about to rip it out. The problem is the tension of that first row. So it starts with every crocheter's favourite instruction: chain 100 and something stitches, and then you have to work into the chain. My first chain was too tight, so the whole thing was feeling very constricted. So I sized up a different hook size. I didn't swatch, by the way. This is maybe why all of this woe is happening with the start of this project. I didn't start with a swatch, so I just went for it. I wasn't happy with the gauge on the beginning of the first attempt, so I sized up to a different hook size. Did another chain. That's this one. I was much happier with the tension of the chain, but when I started working into it, the larger hook size, actually everything is all a bit too loosey, floopy. I'm not happy. So one thing that needs to happen is the starting chain needs to be on a larger size hook than the main body of the shawl. But I still think you can see there's not a lot of stretch to this starting chain, whereas the main stitch of the shawl is extremely soft and stretchy. So I think what actually needs to happen is I need to make the starting chain longer. It has you work the starting chain and then work your first row into every third chain stitch. I think I need to extend the starting chain and work into every fourth, which means an even longer starting chain. Yay! That wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't be as much as of a problem if I knew where my stitch markers are. I'm in that just moved house chaos of I know where some things are, I don't know where all the things are. The one thing I cannot lay my hands on is my stitch markers, and the thought of chaining another 100 and something stitches without being able to clip a stitch marker in every 20 or so to count them is a little bit of a nightmare. But I'm dedicated and I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do this project because I love the shawl so much. I think what I'm going to do is use a technique called a foundation chain, which if you are also a crocheter, you've probably come across. It's a technique where you do your initial chain row and a row of double crochet if you're British, or single crochet if you're American. You work those at the same time, so it's much less of a fiddle than working into that first chain row, which is always not a joyful start to a big crochet project. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I just need to dig in, don't I, and get started. And then once I've got a good flow on, this is going to be a really straightforward project. I must say, I was thinking that it would be nice if it started at the point and grew outwards, but what actually happens, because it starts with the long edge of the shawl, every row that I work, it's going to be getting smaller and smaller, and that feels like Rather than sometimes when you knit a shawl and it grows and grows outwards as you go on, it can feel endless when you get to those really long rows of several hundred stitches. Even though the start of this is going to be tedious, it's going to feel like, I think, gently rolling downhill as we work rows of fewer and fewer stitches down to the point, or at least that's what I'm hoping. I mentioned earlier in the episode that I went through a real knitting slump when we first moved into the new house. And what do you do when you're going through a knitting slump? You turn to another craft, and the one that has been giving me so much joy, both lately and throughout most of this year, is spinning. I've been working on a kind of review of the year episode, which I'll be sharing on my Patreon, covering all the different craft projects I've worked on throughout this year, having a bit of a reflection on what it's been like to work on them, things that I'm most proud of, that kind of thing. And I was really interested and curious to discover that the craft I've done most of this year by far is spinning. And since we moved into the new house, I have a finished bobbin to share with you of my very first garment spin. This is a limited edition special fibre from John Arbon Textiles called Barn Owl, which I purchased in, I think it was 2020 that they came out with this one. I think it was a virtual Wonderwall special. And yeah, I've split the fibre that I have into 3 so that I can create a traditional 3-ply. This is the first bobbin of singles. I'm actually well over 2/3 of the way through my second bobbin of singles already. So I'm more than halfway through this entire garment spin, which is a very thrilling prospect. I'm not in any way thinking it's going to be a garment for this winter. Maybe it'll be ready for next winter, but I am just loving the process of a long extended spin with the same fibre. It's definitely an exercise in concentration to try and keep my consistency. It's much more fibre than I've ever spun of the same thing before. My process with spinning up to this point has really been very experimental and let's just try it and see what happens. So it's a really different experience to try and spin, what did I have? The best part of 500 grams of fibre, all to a consistent thickness so that I can use it for a garment. It's been a real challenge and I've been absolutely loving it. But in the meantime, while I've been spinning away on this project, I have also been working on some fibre preparation. I was lucky enough to receive a fibre advent calendar for my birthday this year. I've never had any kind of fibre or yarn advent before. And it was a lovely treat to have for this year, which has been so intense and stressful and busy with the house move. It's just been really lovely to have a little gift to open up every morning this month. I've been thoroughly enjoying it. So this advent calendar came from Nellie and Eve, who is a dyer actually based here in Wales, not too far from where I live. So the fibre is all Welsh Mule. So it turns out it's a very local, very thoughtful gift that I'm really looking forward to working with. I opened the parcels for a week or so that I could have an idea of how the colours were looking together, so that I could think about what kind of project I might plan with these fibres. I didn't want to just go straight into spinning them. I wanted to see what the colour sequence was and what the colour range was so I could plan a project rather than just spin them as I opened them up and not know what I was going to do with it. And I have to say I wasn't completely in love with the colour sequence as it came out of the advent calendar. So I definitely, for me, made the right decision to wait and think about preparing and combining the fibres in a different way, which I've been able to do because I also received another wonderful gift this year, which was a drum carder. And I've been having so much fun combining these fibres, blending them, mixing them up to make something new. My lovely friend Sonia was here. Sonia, the director of John Arbon Textiles, and therefore an expert in the blending of fibre and colours, and she was able to give me some advice and tips about blending the colours because I've never done this before. And I said, you know, what I'm aiming for is to turn these kind of very singular colours into more kind of muted, heathered neutrals rather than, you know, this is a yellow, this is a pink. I want to combine them together into something that looks like a beautiful, interesting neutral. And Sonia suggested combining colours that are complementary or opposites on the colour wheel. So the peachy orange with the blue or the yellow with the purple. And I found that doing that through the drum carder is works much in the same way as it does if you're mixing paint. You combine those opposites and you get something that is a neutral brownish grey, a muddy kind of colour, which to some people might be revolting. To me is exactly the kind of colour that I was looking to make, and I love how these kind of heathered neutrals are coming together. I'm really excited about this process of playing with the fibres like this. I've been putting them together in a few different blends. The first couple I did with these quite strong pinks and reds in there, and actually I've decided to leave them out for the remaining blends because they're very much more saturated than the other colours, so I'm finding even a little bit of that pink or red is dominating the other shades. So I've put the pinks and reds to one side, and I've been using also in the advent calendar I got 100 grams of just white undyed fibre, which I've been adding into the mixture to kind of mute down, tone down those bright pinks and reds to make things a little bit softer and a bit more neutral. I know that somebody's going to ask if I have a plan for this fibre, and actually I do. I have a very clear plan in mind. I've been thinking about the Snowdrift shawl by Emily Foden of Viola from her book Knits About Winter. I've actually been thinking about that shawl for years, and I believe the shawl is done with a single neutral colour of wool throughout, and it's combined with stripes of different shades of mohair. I was thinking of reversing it, so using a colour changing hand spun wool in various different soft gentle neutrals and combining it with a single shade of mohair throughout to kind of soften the edges and help blend the colours together a bit more. I've got no idea what shade of mohair I will choose. That will be an exciting adventure for once I've got the yarn to swatch with. But my thoughts with the fibre are to spin it into one long, variously colour changing skein that I can use for that shawl. that's all for this episode, although it was quite a lot, wasn't it? I've done quite a lot of crafting considering, and I don't know about you, but crafting is a real place of solace and joy for me amidst the chaos of moving house and finding myself in a new place where I don't know anybody yet, and all kinds of tumultuous changes in my life. Crafting has been like an anchor and a comfort, and I'm so grateful that I have that in my life to reach for. It's been a joy and I love getting to share it with you. If you want to support my work, which is these videos, please consider joining us over on Patreon. I couldn't do these videos without financial support, and I offer various benefits to folks over there in return for financial support, including extra videos, access without adverts, and discounts in my shop. You can also support me by buying me a cuppa or shopping in my shop, although I am now closed for a winter break, which is thoroughly needed, and I'm really looking forward to it. If you want to support in ways that aren't financial, you can also just tell people that you watched this video and enjoyed it. Share it with other folks who you think might enjoy it. That's also a much appreciated way of supporting my work. That's all for now. Thank you so much for being here, for watching, for hanging out with me and Jack, for sharing your thoughts, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.